I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes. Well, we have a very, very special guest today, a guest who is like family to me. And that is because she is someone who probably helps more people than anyone I know, and she has helped me as well. It is Sarah Verardo. And the list of the things that Sarah has done is remarkable. But to keep it brief, because you want to hear from her, Sarah's husband, Michael, was catastrophically injured in Afghanistan in 2010. He, lost his left leg, his left arm, polytraumatic conditions, traumatic brain injury, and he continues to go through a lot of rehab, a lot of therapy to try and get better. And Sarah is the caregiver. She is the person who is there for him. But after he was injured, she went out and worked side by side with the Independence Fund, with Save Our Allies, with Operation Resiliency, all different groups to go out and save people's lives, including my own in Ukraine. She was the person who got the team together, who came and found me, who evacuated me when I was very badly injured. And she helps veterans who are injured in whichever way she can. And it's a pleasure, such a pleasure to have her joining us today on this Memorial Day. And more than anything, I know that it is an opportunity for us all to think of Gold Star families. And I know she's going to talk about that as well. Here she is. What you did with Save Our Allies is you saved my life when I was injured in Ukraine. But more than that, you have saved the lives and lifted up so many people, so many veterans. And it just seems to me that is what you do day in, day out, and you probably are the most remarkable woman that I've ever met. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my goodness, I am not worthy of that. I'm not worthy of that, but thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be here. I just think the world of you.
Thanks, Sarah. This is for Memorial Day. It's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on this week. And I thought let's just start off straight up by talking about Memorial Day. And for you, what we should be thinking about this Memorial Day, what everyone's focus should really be on.
Memorial Day is it is the one day a year we set aside to remember and honor our fallen heroes. And of course, there are many people who mean well, but I will tell you, when I hear Happy Memorial Day or people talking about the beach or a sail, it can be very demoralizing how disconnected many people are from the very high price that has been paid to keep us a land of freedom. And that's what Memorial Day is about.
It's really interesting you say that, actually. And you think it perhaps should be a sort of more somber day, a day that we pay tribute, but that you think the country is starting to get it wrong?
I think that should it be a somber day? I had the privilege and honor of knowing many who gave their lives for this nation. They would not want us to sit around and be depressed, but they would want us to live lives, I think, that are worthy of these incredible sacrifices. Are we doing everything we can every single day to make the world around us better? It's something I try to ask myself every day, and it's something that I think we all need a reminder of. So we don't need to sit around and be sad. We should go and enjoy the beach and the barbecues and maybe even the sails, but we should remember what paid for it and what allows us these beautiful freedoms.
And if we are trying to look at what makes the world better, if we are wanting to bring communities together and make them stronger, and it's a big question, I suppose, but where do you start? What do you think we need to do more of? How can we really invigorate that?
Every single person has the ability to do something. And I remember when we had started working on how we could support the Ukraine war, I missed bedtime one night for one of my daughters. And, Benji, I have 3 daughters and they're still very elaborate bedtime routines. So I missed singing a song to my oldest. And I said to her, I'm so sorry. I'm really trying to help set up these hospitals in Ukraine. And she said, it's okay, Mama, you're being the somebody. And she said, our teacher tells us that everyone says someone needs to do something. Someone needs to help this person. And someone has to be the somebody. And I've really tried to make that my ethos that propels me forward. And I think that everyone, no matter what your resources are, no matter who you are and where you are, we all have the ability to make the world around us, even starting with our own families, just a little bit better. And that ripple effect, it's amazing.
And I want to come back to families as well in a little bit, but you just said there that everyone can be a somebody, that everyone should be able to do something, but you really are the somebody. You go out and help in so many different ways. And I just curious as to what drives someone like you in a way that I don't see anyone else so dedicated and driven the way you are. So what is really driving you? What is your motive?
My motive truly is pretty simple. My husband, he really inspired me because he gave so much, and I know that he gives every single day everything he has, and it's the least I can do to try. And it's a debt we'll never repay, but to try to match what so many have given us.
Yeah. How's Michael doing at the moment?
Michael is okay. It's a very long road home from war, and it's really complicated by traumatic brain injury, which is the signature hallmark injury of those who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. So it takes these polytraumatic conditions and makes them more so. But he gives every day. It may not seem like much for those looking in, but he gives every day everything he has.
Yeah. On the days that are difficult, for example, and, I know from my injuries as well, there are tricky days. There are days you've got to pick yourself up, figure that you can find a way forward, that it's okay. And I wonder what your message would be on those kind of days to people who are struggling. And of course, we will talk as well about, for example, Operation Resiliency, something that you focused on a lot. That's a program you set up, which basically says it's okay to not be okay. And, you help so many veterans who have been injured as well. But we'll talk about that in 1 minute. But how would you tell people if they're having those tricky days? How would you try and lift them up?
Well, certainly it is okay not to be okay. And suppressing those feelings or pushing them down, that doesn't help anyone. I do believe that losing yourself in service to others and to the world around you helps keep the focus on moving forward. But on those days when that is too hard and you're down in this hole and you can't get out, the greatest thing to do is to put your hand towards someone who wants to be there with you and can help lift you out. And I think that's an obligation we all, just as humans, have to one another.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about sort of the Operation Resiliency and the work you do there and some of the experiences you've had?
So much of the work that I've been blessed to do really does stem with my experience and Michael's deployment. He only had one combat deployment, which was devastating to him that it was cut short. 9 months into the deployment, of course, he had to be medically evacuated. And what we saw, their unit was very hard hit. This was Bravo Company, 2nd of the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. They had about a 60% Purple Heart rate, and they sent 24 men home as casualties of an infantry group of 140 men. And so what we saw initially was this sheer will to survive these catastrophic physical injuries. And then slowly we saw that the unit started being hit by these mental health emergencies and suicide. And, in America, every 65 minutes, a veteran dies by his or her own hand. And how and what can we do to get that number as close to zero as possible? And I'll never stop. I mean, people have said to me, it's never going to be zero, but I'll never stop until we all are part of that effort. And so Operation Resiliency reunites the combat unit in the formation they originally deployed, recalling that honor and service that is innate to that military brotherhood and putting them back in that formation for their most important mission that they'll have the rest of their lives, which is to keep each other alive and thriving at home the same way they tried to on the battlefield.
Yeah, it's amazing how much community means, and I was in San Antonio at the Brooke Army Medical Center recovering. And that's the thing that I probably learned more than anything else is that being in that community, the support you get from them. And I imagine that soldiers who have been side by side in the battlefield, I guess one of the hardest times is when you go home, many injured, they've lost friends, is that moment where you are taken out of that, where you lose that community. And is that where you see some of the biggest difficulties?
Yes, those transition periods. And in your own story, I certainly don't want to tell it for you, but I look at the camaraderie and the connectivity you had with Jock and how difficult that would have been to split immediately because that was what remained. And I think when people are ripped from what they know and they're medevaced out, in your case, rushed out in this should be a movie scene, you want to be with what is familiar, right? And so that bond, it is more important than ever.
Yeah, and I remember also from almost the first few days that I finally was in Landstuhl and I was being treated by the military medics, the first thing they did was bring in people who had also been injured like me. So I understood it. So I knew what it was going to be like. And I know that's the kind of work that you do as well. You really try to bring people together as well. You mentioned Save Our Allies there briefly, my own evacuation. And It's another thing that you're doing that it's about going out and saving people who are in trouble all around the world. And you have the most incredible group of people who help you and who set it up. Chad, Robichaud, Nick, Tim. I'm trying to understand what makes people like that operating in this world and helping veterans and going out to save lives, what it is for those people to put everything aside and just they have it in them that they want to go and make the world better and they want to save lives. Because to be honest, that isn't common. Most people do not feel like that. So what is it that makes the people who, like yourself and who you are surrounded with, what makes those people like that?
Well, those guys, they do the hard work. They are real life superheroes, and they truly are. They're incredible. But I tell this to people because it's true. When I've asked them to go, and all over the world to go, it never occurs to me that they would say no, because they wouldn't. And that is who they are. And that's why they're warriors. You sit with the warriors and the conversation is different. The caliber is higher. The people and the missions and the way they spend their days, it's just better.
Yeah. And I know they're still doing that work nonstop, which is remarkable as well. The Independence Fund, something else that you've worked with for many years, and which I was lucky enough to represent a little bit at the Invictus Games. So I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. But that again, that is dedicated to restoring the physical, mental, emotional sort of independence of wounded veterans. And wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the Independence Fund and its goal.
Well, the Independence Fund just stands in the gap with these families. We understand that there's never a straight line after suffering these catastrophic war injuries and the emotional distress that can happen both upon these combat experiences and coming home. And so how can this grateful nation work to provide resources and support for the veteran and their families? That's really the key part, because we understand that when a service member is wounded, the family continues to serve long after they leave the battlefield, absorbing a new normal that no one signed up for and no one expected. The service member expects to go to war and come home, or go to war and not come home and make that ultimate sacrifice. But that middle ground, how are we walking with these families long term? And that's where the Independence Fund comes in.
Do you feel that some of the families, Gold Star widows perhaps, are not getting some of the support they need? Do you think that there needs to be more attention on them? Look, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are over. Do you also think that the Americans are also looking forward and they're perhaps forgetting some of the families that have lost forever, whose families have made such incredible dedication to the country? It's
a debt we can never repay. And so we'll never do enough. We can't, but we absolutely need to make these installments on that debt. And we need to honor these families in our communities, bring them into the fold. I think there are so many great ways to show up for these families. And when a crisis passes, when that original loss maybe is softer or absorbed by the community, people do stop showing up. And I believe that we need to remember every single day what allows us to be this nation of freedom, what sets us apart from so many others.
Yeah. How can people get involved? How can people specifically help Gold Star families as well?
Well, Gold Star families deserve our thanks, our support, and great benefits. And there are always movements. Gold Star spouses in particular are often punished, upon remarriage, and they lose benefits, and the benefits are clunky and difficult to understand. So I think a lot of this also goes back to, these are issues that should be purple. They're issues that every single American should support and we all can be part of. And so that goes from advocating for these families and making sure they're part of important national discussion.
And then here we talk about widows and families, but what about children as well? And I wonder if you could talk to me about, the process that a child goes through and the impact that losing a parent, perhaps in conflict, has on the children, and how we can then help the children as well.
There are thousands of children in this country, of course, children of our fallen heroes. And then there are children who are living with a catastrophically wounded parent. And in both cases, all of these children, they're living with the aftermath of a conflict and a war that they didn't sign up for. And so how can we show up in the communities? I know in my case, and I'm, of course, Michael is alive, and thank God he's not able to be involved with our children at this point in his recovery the way we had hoped. But there are so many people that show up, and it's the dads in the community who grab my girls and bring them out on the soccer field, or help tie up cleats before we go on for a game, or make sure they're standing there for that high five. And I watched the same for my girlfriends, my friends who their husbands were killed or died from suicide post-service, and the people in the communities who show up and just remind them how valuable their family remains to this society. I think that's just a great way to honor them.
Yeah, you mentioned your own daughters there, and I was going to ask, so much of the parenting falls on you because Michael can't. There's some things he can't help with. There's some things he can't do. And I was going to ask, hey, how you manage to handle that extra burden? Does it feel like an extra burden that you're having to do more? And who around you comes in to help?
Well, it certainly does. So our road home and Michael's road home from war was, of course, not particularly straightforward. We had 3 babies in 3 years, which I later realized that was God's plan for our family because of the declines that Michael would have in the later years post-injury. And so he had his 120th surgery in April of 2019. And since then, he's really required full-time help from a grown-up to be able to function both cognitively and physically. And so it does. And I'm sole parenting I'm sole parenting, period, which is a hard thing to say out loud. Our girls love him. They love him. He is unable to participate in the day-to-day the way that we had hoped. And so really what that looks like is it a burden? Well, it's more difficult, of course, than I would have ever expected. But also the girls were so close that we're kind of like a little crew, and they're just my best little friends. And I do have the blessing of help from my family and my friends and our community to show up for the big and small. They're in the everyday.
More of our conversation right after this. It's a bit personal question, I suppose, but how does a relationship change after sort of Michael had injuries and you have to accept that and move forward? And then how does your relationship together change?
Well, I've known Michael since we were 14, 15 years old. So I've known Michael, pretty much my whole life. I don't remember much time before him. But what that looks like is the relationship, I think it certainly changes over time. We had a very normal marriage post-injury, and we were able to have our children, and we went on date nights, and we had the typical squabbles and challenges that people have in the day-to-day with having a young family. And we had so much good. We're in a position now where the memories of that time are certainly more secure than the future is. And so we take them day at a time. Michael knows I'm his person, and I do not take for granted or take it lightly that I'm the person that he really trusts to make the decisions that are best for him and in turn for our girls and for our whole family. And so that relationship, I'm Michael's caregiver. I navigate and decide his medical decisions and treatments and what we're doing. And he has a faith in me that I will work every single day to always fully deserve.
Yeah. You mentioned faith there, and I think that's an important part, certainly, of your life, many people's lives. And to what degree does faith play a role in this? And in everything that you do?
It's everything. Truly, simply, it's everything. I cannot imagine getting through the day to day without having an incredible faith. And when Michael and I were getting married, before he gave me an engagement ring, he gave me a Bible. And he said to me, and these words replay for me every day. And he said to me, we are going to have to work. Our biggest priority will be to work to get each other to heaven. And we will have to always care more about our holiness than our happiness. And it's something I think about every single day. Yeah.
Do you ever ask yourself the question that why God would put you in a position where, Michael was injured, or that life is in some senses harder? Sometimes you would say the same, why are there floods? Why are there volcanoes? Why are there, do you ever ask yourself that?
Well, certainly. I mean, I'm human, and it's something I say to my pastor of this feels extraordinarily hard. But what I have learned, and it is very hard. I don't ever want to sugarcoat it and say that this isn't hard. I mean, there is hard in our every single day, but define hard. And I can do hard things. I tell myself that all the time. I tell my girls, we can do hard things. And our version of hard might be a blessing that someone else is praying for. I mean, it's all about, I think I have such an incredible global perspective too, having worked in so many countries where people don't have the freedoms and the blessings that we and many people just take for granted. So I focus on that bigger picture. I understand. And I also know that if it's not good, God is not done. And I really believe that.
Yeah. You talk bigger picture there as well. And I wonder, you're often in DC. You understand that not only do you have to help people by going out and making sure they're doing well and saving lives, you've also got to go and lobby and raise funds and meet congressmen and senators. And you're an expert at that too. But I wonder, does that ever grind on you? Do you ever sometimes think, do you feel you have to play the political game, the lobbying game to make things happen? And do you think the system is helping in the right way?
I think that this issue in particular, and these issues really, be it getting our Afghan interpreters out of Afghanistan or helping Ukraine or ensuring veterans have the benefits and support they have been promised. To me, these are really easy issues. And whenever someone overcomplicates them, I can't begin to understand that, because this is the right thing. And I'm really convicted. So I believe the right thing is the right thing. There are issues that deserve nuance and thoughtful conversation, but these issues are something that I believe every freedom-loving, democracy-protecting person needs to stand beside and support. And so, yes, that can be a very difficult process when, for example, the VA. There are great things about the VA system, and there are archaic levels of bureaucracy and it's death by red tape and 1,000 paper cuts. And you think, I mean, I have had to bring Michael in. And this is a direct quote. If I've needed a new piece of equipment for him, they will say, well, we need you to bring him in so that we can check if he still has his injuries. And
unbelievable.
As though something would grow back. And somehow a photo is not sufficient. So in those cases, you just think, this is mind-boggling. But is it hard? Yes, but I believe that this life has been given to us. I really love Romans. It's my favorite part of the Bible. But I believe that, what the enemy has used to harm, God uses for good. So perhaps this is our experience so that we can then take it and translate it into action and help for others.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talk about the enemy there, and I hadn't thought to ask this, but I wonder, how do you feel about the Taliban, about the people who caused these injuries, who took so many American lives, in the name of their Allah? What are your thoughts to them?
It's devastating. The entire reason Save Our Allies was formed and born was because as Afghanistan was falling, I had started working with the Afghan government in 2015 to honor and celebrate veterans from both nations and have them have a dignified exit if they were not able to have one. For many, like my husband, he never walked off of that soil. He was medically evacuated. For a lot of American heroes, I mean, that is sacred ground. Afghanistan contains the blood of many American patriots and their Afghan counterparts. And so, of course, as the Taliban was taking over and just marching across Afghanistan, it was devastating. And I remember one of the worst experiences of my life was learning that Kandahar had fallen. And that's where Michael was injured in the Arghandab Valley area, a horrific area of southern Afghanistan. And he sleeps in a hospital bed in what was our master bedroom. And I remember I went in there and I knew I needed to tell him myself. And I told him that Kandahar had fallen to the Taliban. And he has his dog, Bravo, for his beloved Bravo company. And he didn't really say much. He just kind of snuggled his dog. And I walked out and I said to him, Michael, I have to tell you something very sad. And I knew I was going to break his heart, but he didn't really say much. And I walked out and I heard just wailing coming from his room. And I went back in there and he just said, I just wish I could go and help those people. And And so for me, this was a moral obligation that our government had made to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who had performed the good and faithful service to America, who were now being hunted for the most horrible crime the Taliban could think of, which is supporting American ideals and American military. And I knew I had to do something because someone had to do something. And I got to be that somebody. But it is gut wrenching to me to think that this terrorist organization has the way that America was forced to withdraw from Afghanistan is something that I think will be a stain on our nation forever. And we absolutely need to do everything we can to still save our Afghan allies.
And I just imagine that for the families and Gold Star families, who've lost people out there fighting for freedom, fighting to bring a better world to Afghanistan, they must feel betrayal as well. And I imagine some of them are asking themselves, why were those lives lost if the US didn't stick by it?
That is a question that has haunted, I know, Gold Star families, veterans. Many were comparing it to their own Vietnam. And to leave a war after 20 years and so many lives the way that we did is something that was hard to reconcile. And for a long time in my own house, I felt like these declines were fast and furious at us. And I was able to reconcile the declines in our own family life with, it's okay. Afghan girls are going to school and they're braiding their hair and they have this level of freedom. And I remember right around the withdrawal, someone said to me, well, are you wondering, was it all worth it? And I have to know that it was, because I would not be able to bear it if it wasn't. I just wouldn't.
You and I have daughters roughly the same age. They're young. And I wonder what, at what age you started to having discussions with them. And obviously they, about the work you do, about the veterans, and they're surrounded by it. And I just wonder, as a parent, you don't want them to see anything too bad, but you also want them to be well aware of what lies in the world and what might lie ahead. And I just wonder, as a parent, how you talk to them about it and how much you expose them to as you go through your own work.
Well, certainly, I think that is one of the biggest challenges for parents, especially those who are blessed to have our basic essentials provided. And so we understand, I tell my girls, and since a very early age, we are blessed that we have enough food to eat, that we have a warm bed, that I have healthy daughters. I mean, that's the jackpot in life, right? To have these healthy children who you get to tuck into a warm bed at night. There's nothing better. And so I've always wanted them to have that perspective without scaring them. And so in the most age appropriate ways, I've tried to explain about war in other areas and how some little girls can't go to school. And some people all over the world, there are children that walk hours and hours a day to go to school. So, complaining about that's okay. That's certainly part of life. But having that perspective is my greatest wish for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel exactly the same with my own children. What do you think is the one thing we need to really be looking forward to? The wars are over, but, we must never stop looking forward. I mean, we must never stop preparing, being in the right place. So do you look forward as well? Are you sort of making sure that these systems are in place, that we are ready, that not only are we helping those who are currently injured, but we also have to prepare for something else happens?
Well, yes. I mean, we have a lot of threats in our country right now. I mean, we have a lot of issues that we are facing. And is our military prepared? And is our military going to remain the most lethal fighting force in the world? Recruiting, retention, they're at an all-time low. That's really scary. What does our military need to be focused on to make sure that they are attracting the best and brightest and people who want to preserve freedom and democracy? And how can we all be part of that? And how we treat our veterans. That is going to say so much for these future generations of warfighters. So it's something that I think everyone can and should be part of in their communities, making sure that veterans are included. And that can be done in tactical ways, right? Employment, transition benefits, educational benefits, but also just being and showing them that grateful nation that truly stands ready to support them when they come home.
Yeah, I can't help but imagine, and I see when you travel around America, that there seem to be two different sides of America, the ones that you and I love and know around so many of the great states and central states. And as opposed to, some of the more liberal states,
yes,
which who look down on the military, who think it is a negative. And I just look forward and I hope that, like you're doing, it's about trying to spread the message, trying to tell them that this is what gives us freedom and helps us and keeps the bad away from us. And I don't know, do you worry sometimes that more people are forgetting the importance of the military?
Oh, certainly. Mary Scott, my middle daughter, told me the other day that a little girl in her class does not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And of course, right away, I wanted to say, well, we've known men who have come home under that flag and people like your dad Michael, even when he could not walk, he always stood for the flag and he always was kneeling in church. And so, again, that kind of effort, but the freedom of all Americans, even and especially those who think, live, worship, and love differently and vote differently than we do. But how do we instill that the most basic respect for these institutions? I mean, I feel very blessed to live in North Carolina. I certainly do. But it's still scary what we're seeing in terms of a lack of respect for our country and our freedoms, and even at college campuses, what these people are saying, they don't even understand it. And as a parent, it's why I feel it's so important to teach my children to, of course, be great, independent, free thinkers, and to understand what allows and gives them those rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, just to finish up, Sarah, if you wanted to, if there's anything that you really want to talk about that you think is important to say on Memorial Day, and of the work that you're doing, or where we need to put our focus.
For Memorial Day, really, it's a day that I urge and I hope that everyone will pause and they will, if you don't know a fallen service member, that you'll find one. I mean, there are these amazing stories of heroism and in those final moments from every generation and every conflict, and just our most recent conflicts. When you learn about people, my friend Krista, her husband, he was killed in 2013, and his final words were, wife, kids, love. And to have that kind of love in your heart, and truly to be the word come to life in those final moments of, greater love hath no man than this. And these people who laid their lives down, they really did. They were the word come to life in their final moments, and they deserve everything we have. And they certainly deserve to have their names said and remembered at your dinner tables, and to learn about them and to pray and be there for their families.
Yeah, everyone listening should go out, should look someone up, read about them, so that we never forget these people, these amazing men, women who have given everything, given it all for our freedom, for our safety, and for our country. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such an honor always to speak to you. You're part of my family. You're part of so many people's family. And I'm grateful for everything. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm not sure I have ever met someone who does as much good, who works as hard and as focused in this field or any field as Sarah. And when you are around her and when you talk to her, you get this amazing, happy, bubbly, joyous person, but someone who is also incredibly driven. And she just seems to balance both parenthood as well as going out and saving lives. And so I honestly wish that more people in the world were like her. I really do. I think it would build communities. I think it would make sure that we all get better. I think that it would create something that is so strong. And what she does is she tries to raise a voice for people who are being forgotten, people who have given not only their lives, but also been badly injured in the name of our country. So it's just an honor to speak to her. I hope you enjoyed listening to her, and I hope that you take in mind what she said. And this week, on Memorial Day, go and remember those people who gave everything in the name of our country, in the name of freedom. Thanks for listening to Searching for Heroes. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.